The message today is from Dr. Jeff Wilson, a member of our church, a professor of religious studies at Renison College within the University of Waterloo, and a Buddhist monk serving Buddhist congregations in Toronto and Hamilton. I am really happy to welcome you, Jeff. This is great. So welcome to our pulpit.
Good morning, everyone. Seems my microphone is picking me up. Excellent, great. So I want to give a special welcome to friends and visitors who aren't part of the Grand River Unitarian Congregation. We're certainly very pleased that you've joined us here today, and thank you for sharing from your traditions. This is our interfaith service, so today I want to talk about several different kinds of opportunities that interfaith encounters offer to us. These are learning about religious others, learning from religious others, serving the community together with religious others, and building community together with religious others. I think these different ways of relating to one another help to clarify some of the value which interfaith work provides us in our dangerously divided world. The first way of relating to interfaith opportunities, that's learning about others. This is something that'll be pretty familiar to anyone who's spent a fair amount of time in Unitarian circles. In my own case, I was raised Unitarian, and in some ways, my religious upbringing was one long, interesting series of interfaith encounters. Our Sunday school curriculum was mostly a set of lessons about various world religions. And this approach goes back to the 1940s, when the religious educator Sophia Lyon-Fahs created the Church Across the Street program. Her program brought ministers, rabbis, and other local religious leaders to speak about their religion to Unitarian church kids. So first a guest would come and tell us about their religion, and then the following week there'd be a field trip to go to their church or their synagogue or what have you. Wherever that guest speaker happened to work. And this repeated for as many times as different religions that the Sunday school teachers could sort of find and coerce into coming to talk to us. So therefore, Unitarian children, they heard directly from religious others, and we had a glimpse of what it was like inside the churches and the synagogues that we walked past in our neighborhoods. I can recall many lessons from those long ago days of the 1980s and early 1990s. In grade 2, we studied evolution and the history of life on Earth. In grade 3, it was religions of Asia. In grade 5, we learned about the origins of Christianity. I remember building a balsa wood replica of a Nazarene dwelling like Jesus might have grown up in. I was quite proud of that replica. I think it still might be somewhere in my parents' home. In grade 6, we studied humanism and ethics. And I well remember a neo-pagan ritual which we performed in the high school youth group. We were divided into male and female groups outside of the entrance to the church gymnasium. And then the boys entered the darkened gym from one side in single file, chanting, "We are the old men, we are the new men, we are the same men, different from before," repeating that over and over. And then at the same time, the girls entered the gym from the other side, and they were singing, "We all come from the goddess, and to her we shall return like a drop of rain flowing to the ocean." So this was going on as we came in, and then as our lines sort of passed each other, we then swirled around each other, still chanting, until the 50 or so of us were a rotating spiral. It was really quite a magical experience. I remember this well. This is from my memory. I didn't go and look up these words or anything. I did that one time a certain number of years ago, which I won't calculate for you, and I still recall it from inside me. So I think these different ways of learning about each other, these were very important, right? This sort of curiosity and respect for other religions that was modeled for me while I was growing up, this formed the basis of my religious identity as a Unitarian. There are folks for whom Unitarianism is an escape from something bad, a sort of refuge from what is harmful in other religions. And I get that. I'm glad that we're able to play that important role for the many people who need it. But as for me, raised as a Unitarian, Unitarianism is an opening out to something good. It's a bridge to all that is beautiful, insightful, and nurturing in the world's religions. As a matter of fact, I first encountered Buddhism in my grade 3 Sunday school lessons. And I can distinctly remember thinking back at that time that if I had to choose a different religion when I grew up, it would be Buddhism. So, funny how karma works sometimes. There was real value in this learning about religious others. In the church across the street curriculum, we came to know more about those with whom we share this world. Whether or not we were interested in believing in the same ways that they believed, our understanding was increased. We were better equipped to work, to play, and to live within the wide, non-Unitarian world where we found ourselves. I'm glad that we've been able to repeat this pattern with our own children here at Grand River Unitarian Congregation. They're prepared to meet our diverse world with curiosity, with appreciation, and discernment about the aspects of different cultures. Whether we're Unitarian, Anglican, Catholic, Muslim, Jewish, humanist, or otherwise, each of us is surrounded by religious others during most moments of our lives. Interfaith learning is vital in such a mixed society, on such a mixed planet as ours. Now, the second way of relating to interfaith opportunities, which I want to stress this morning, is learning from others. This form of relationship recognizes that religious others aren't just a source of information, they're also potentially a source of wisdom. Through interfaith encounter, we have the chance to learn from people who may have more experience and insight than ourselves. And their different perspectives provide us with an opportunity to look at things from a new angle and to discover what might have been hidden from our own point of view. I've learned from so many different sources of wisdom in my life. This morning, I'll just take one example. Although Christianity is the largest form of religion in North America, I was raised outside of it and have experienced it only as an outsider, never as an insider. Nonetheless, I've been fortunate to learn from many wonderful Christians, in person or via their words and actions. So the most recent of these in my own life is the Reverend Marianne Edgar Budde, the Anglican Bishop of Washington, D.C. She's become famous as a symbol of religious resistance to the oppressive policies of Donald Trump. In June 2020, Trump used one of her churches as a backdrop for a photo op about using military force against nonviolent protesters. And Bishop Budde went on national television after this, and she wrote for the newspapers, pushing back at his policies. She argued for Christian-informed ways of caring for our neighbors and avoiding violence. And for this, she received threats and hate. I wondered about how Bishop Budde felt the courage to stand up for a compassionate approach to Christianity when she knew that this would surely bring her hardship and possibly violence. So I bought a copy of her book, How We Learn to Be Brave, which you can imagine me holding it up here because I left it at home by accident. So, in this wonderful book, represented by my hand, what was her recipe for bravery? She says, this is a quote, "How we prepare for decisive moments determines our ability to step up to them when they come. Moments like these are preceded by seasons of preparation, practice, and intention, of making countless daily decisions that determine our capacity to be brave when called upon, or when we're summoned not of our own choosing. The courage to be brave when it matters requires a lifetime of small decisions that set us on a path of self-awareness, attentiveness, and willingness to risk failure for what we believe is right." That's the end of that quote. In her book, Bishop Buddy gives examples of times when she or others were able to practice bravery. One of her important insights is that bravery doesn't look the same in different situations. Sometimes it looks like leaving a situation and striking out for other possibilities, taking a leap of faith, as they say. At other times, it looks like deciding to stay in a situation even though it might be easier or more comfortable to leave. Bravery may look like working for change, but it may also look like accepting things that you did not choose. These are all different scenarios for practicing bravery that she discusses in her book. And sometimes it does look like those dramatic moments, such as when Bishop Buddy defied Donald Trump for misusing her church. These are what she calls stepping up to the plate moments, which are the most obvious, but also the least common moments of bravery during a lifetime of small acts of courage. Now, some people may know from following the news that Bishop Buddy stepped up to the plate again this past January when she spoke at Donald Trump's inaugural prayer service. Despite experiencing blowback from her first clash with Trump, and knowing that he had become dangerously vindictive toward anyone who had publicly opposed him, Bishop Buddy understood the assignment that God seemed to have placed before her. With Donald Trump, J.D. Vance, their wives, and various followers seated directly before her and unable to leave during the service, she called forth her courage and she spoke from her Christian values. She delivered a sermon that called for the recognition of other people's dignity and worth, for personal honesty, and for humility. These are, frankly, things that appear lacking to me in the Trump administration and, frankly, in many other parts of contemporary society. Our problems are not concentrated in a single place or among a single group of people. And then she spoke directly to the most powerful man in the world. She said, here's a quote directly from her sermon, "Let me make one final plea, Mr. President. Millions have put their trust in you and as you told the nation yesterday, you have felt the providential hand of a loving God. In the name of our God, I ask you to have mercy upon the people in our country who are scared now. There are gay, lesbian, and transgender children in Democratic, Republican, and independent families, some who fear for their lives. And the people who pick our crops and clean our office buildings, who labor in poultry farms and meat packing plants, who wash the dishes after we eat in restaurants and work the night shifts in hospitals. They may not be citizens or have the proper documentation, but the vast majority of immigrants are not criminals. They pay taxes and are good neighbors. They are faithful members of our churches and mosques, synagogues, gurdwaras, and temples. I ask you to have mercy, Mr. President, on those in our communities whose children fear that their parents will be taken away, and that you help those who are fleeing war zones and persecution in their own lands to find compassion and welcome here. Our God teaches us that we are to be merciful to the stranger, for we were all once strangers in this land. May God grant us the strength and courage to honor the dignity of every human being, to speak the truth to one another in love, and walk humbly with each other and our God for the good of all people, the good of all people in this nation and the world." It's the end of the quote from her sermon. So, these are the words of a Christian who has a belief in a guiding divine hand, something that I as a Buddhist do not share. But that doesn't really matter. They are words of wisdom and compassion for someone who has been there and learned things that I, living in a time of peril, need to know. I appreciate her courage to stand up for compassion, which, from a Buddhist perspective, is the most important value. And I'm struck by her perspective that bravery is something that we practice. That is to say, it's a practice, an activity, not simply an emotion or a personality quirk. As we practice bravery, bit by bit, in the different situations of our lives, we become better able to perform bravery when truly important, decisive moments do arrive. I keep thinking about this point as the world gets worse, and I consider what I need to do to try and to make it better. Thus, by being open to wisdom found in interfaith encounter, I'm able to learn from others and be benefited. Now, a further way of relating to interfaith possibilities is by serving the community and fellowship with others. Many years ago, I lived in central North Carolina, where I worked for the Interfaith Council for Social Service, the IFC as we called it. We ran the local soup kitchen, the homeless shelter, the transitional housing for families that were escaping domestic violence. We ran the low-income residences for people rising from poverty. We ran vocational and training programs and many other essential services for people in the area. Our work was supported financially and with volunteering by the many churches and other religious groups who formed the IFC. Coming from a wide range of theologies, practices, cultures, and political orientations, they all recognize that we are stronger together and can care for one another regardless of personal religious identification. The IFC is one of the most important organizations in that area, and not only because it feeds, houses, and cares for so many. In the still quite segregated American South, where racial, religious, and class differences are especially sharp, the Interfaith Council is one of the only places where black and white, rich and poor, evangelical and humanist meet, shake hands, and roll up their sleeves to work alongside one another. I was living there in North Carolina when 9/11 happened, and as the United States became more militarized, aggressive, and fearful, I organized a local chapter of the Buddhist Peace Fellowship. Now, most people who come from a North American background probably don't realize that Buddhism is very diverse, and the different kinds of Buddhism don't spend much time talking with one another. They aren't necessarily antagonistic, but they don't share a common set of scriptures or of practices or of devotional figures. So naturally, they tend to cluster among themselves. But the Buddhist Peace Fellowship wasn't a type of denomination. It was the only trans-sectarian gathering place where any kind of Buddhist was invited to gather with other Buddhists in order to work for peace and for justice. Thus, we attracted Buddhists from many different groups who had never actually met one another, including a woman from a type of Buddhism that's famous for not cooperating with others, and which other Buddhists tend to be suspicious of. Right? But she came and was an active member of that group along with us, a good contributor. Coming out of our various traditions, we met as one body, concerned about the rise of authoritarianism in the American government and acts of military violence overseas. We marched together against the impending invasion of Iraq. We gathered to discuss Buddhist approaches to peace, and we joined the Interfaith Council for Social Service. In doing so, we expanded the IFC beyond the Christian, Jewish, and Unitarian groups that were its backbone. Thus, we helped to widen the circle of interfaith community service work in North Carolina. Service to others via interfaith work is a vital contribution to the community. It not only helps those who receive assistance, it helps everyone else in the community as well. It does so by creating a healthier society and by strengthening the frayed bonds of our divided communities. And it points on to one more form of value that interfaith encounters can provide. And that final one is especially what Interfaith Grand River is about. If the Interfaith Council for Social Service is about serving the community, Interfaith Grand River is about building new community together. We meet monthly, rotating through various churches, temples, and other congregations in Waterloo, Kitchener, and Cambridge. In visiting each other's places, we're like those Unitarian Sunday school kids learning about other traditions. At our meetings, we hold small group discussions where peers from other religions share their perspectives on topics such as identity and forgiveness. And as we share our own ideas with the group in that process, like reading and considering the experiences of Bishop Buddy, we learn from neighbors of other traditions. At times, as a group, we're moved to research, to speak out, and to act on pressing issues, such as Interfaith Grand River's recent open letter to the government about safe consumption sites, or IGR's ongoing support for an Afghan refugee family. Thus, Interfaith Grand River is serving the community, like the Interfaith Council in North Carolina. All of these activities add up to more than the sum of their parts. These are the ways in which IGR builds new community, strengthening the social fabric of the region and of our lives. Interfaith encounters such as these help to break down fear. They help to heal old wounds and to find new friends. We live in an age of silos, where every force in society and the media is actively pushing us away from one another, pushing us to associate only with those who are exactly like us in every possible way. Sometimes this is painted as safety, but we've come to see the dangerous fruits of retreat into social, religious, and political cliquishness. Cut off from one another, convinced that the other silos are full of deplorable people whom we couldn't possibly have common ground with, we become weaker, fragmented, and easier to divide and conquer. We need to take every opportunity to learn about, learn from, serve alongside, and build community with those who differ in some ways from ourselves. These are precisely the practices which will create resilience for society during these divided times. So I'm thankful to Interfaith Grand River for giving me an opportunity to engage in these various sorts of practices. And I'm grateful to all of you for listening to my perspective this morning. Thank you all very much.